In this episode, Mike and I are joined by Jarod Carter to discuss the evolving world of telehealth. With the novel coronavirus COVID-19 spreading around the world, physical therapy and other face-to-face healthcare services are being significantly affected in efforts to flatten the curve. Business owners, clinicians, and patients alike are being asked to adapt quickly by stepping outside their comfort zone and exploring virtual services. Jarod does an amazing job during this podcast with providing immediate, actionable steps you can take now to get started with telehealth. More importantly, he does a really nice job with helping you to reimagine the true value of physical therapists' knowledge and skills and taking the magnifying glass off of our hands. This podcast goes deep, I won't lie, but it's packed with a ton of value. I really hope you enjoy this one.
The Prehab audio experience will teach you how to take control of your health through knowledge by optimizing performance, promoting longevity, and keeping your movement system in tune. Welcome to your host, the Prehab Guys.
Today we have Jarod Carter, owner of Carter Physiotherapy in Austin, Texas. Jarod is a trailblazer in terms of leading the way in cash-based PT over the past decade. Now he is here helping the PT community, navigating the world of telehealth, and building resiliency into your practice beyond the current epidemic. Jarod, it's an honor to have you join the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to finally get to be on y'all's podcast instead of the other way around.
Yeah, this is going to be good. So Mike and Craig here, we have Jarod Carter on, and we're going to be talking everything about telehealth, what you can do now, as well as what you should be doing into the future, and sort of managing this current pandemic that's going on with the coronavirus, the novel COVID-19. So let's just jump right into it, Jarod. Feel free to just give us an update as to what your life has been like the past week, because there's so many moving parts and things are evolving by the hour, it feels like.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, it seems like every day, not that it affects my practice as much being cash-based, but, you're hearing about Medicare updates and insurance companies, coming around and starting to cover things and, different rules. And, it's just, it's pretty crazy. But as far as my practice is concerned, literally 1 week ago, we were seeing patients. 7 days ago, we were seeing patients in the clinic. And then 6 days ago, we converted from 100% always in the clinic, face-to-face, patients to 100% out of network. And it's not here in Austin, things aren't quote unquote bad yet. We've not been asked to close our doors or anything like that. But for a variety of reasons I won't get into here, I just decided that it was going to be best to go ahead and make the shift preemptively. So just a few days before that, over the weekend, I started to talk to staff about, hey, I think we really need to go ahead and just make this happen, make this shift happen. I wasn't at that time, just a few days before, necessarily planning on shifting 100%. I thought at first it'd be like, all right, I'm just going to, let's have it available so that we can offer it to those who are canceling because they want to practice social distancing. But and I haven't told anyone this yet, but actually we ended up getting a call from a patient who hadn't been in our clinic for about 4 weeks. So we weren't worried about exposure, but she called and just to let us know, hey, 2 of my coworkers just tested positive for coronavirus. And we're like, oh, wow. And, I was already kind of thinking in the direction of, I need to just probably preemptively do this to support those who are making that decision. And that kind of got me over the hump. I was like, no, we're done. And I'm not saying that to kind of compel anyone else to make decisions one way or the other, but it just felt like it was the right thing to do. And that even though it's going to be certainly, even if we did everything right and converted as many patients as possible to telehealth, it was still going to be a financial kick in the gut in the midst of obviously a huge economic downturn as a whole. But, there are some things that are just more important than finances and, taking risks with with you, your family, your staff's lives, and your patients' lives, it just does not ever come close to superseding, a quarterly profit statement. So we made that move, and so it's been just about a week now, 6 days, and we've been seeing a good number of telehealth patients. We've been able to retain a little over 50% of our current patient load has converted to telehealth patients. And then through some hustle and some marketing strategies that we can talk about later, we've been able to already gain new actual, like people calling for telehealth or past patients calling for telehealth through email marketing, free PR that we've been able to get, and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the overview of the last week. It's been totally nuts at home. As y'all know, I've got, kids with some medical issues with SMA. And so all of our medical staff here and all our therapists, and they get 14 therapy sessions a week. Almost all of those therapists have now stopped coming, preemptively also made that decision. We've got one that, I'm not sure how much longer he'll end up sticking with us, but it's been really nuts because now it's like, I don't want them to lose progress. So I've been trying in the midst of both my online business, my clinical business, kind of pushing those forward, but still trying to do therapy sessions with them. So very little sleep, lots of coffee. And it's been a fun kind of crazy roller coaster, and helping others to get through this as we learn so much on our own day to day. It's been interesting.
And I just want to say, pat on the back, for making that call, like you said, the health and safety of your patients, your staff, yourself, everyone involved. That's huge, and especially when it's not even a mandated thing yet. So like in Austin, whereas we're out in LA, I know it's mandated here. New York, I feel like a lot of other states now. And just looking out, it's always do no harm. So that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So
hope it helps somehow.
I like it because the thing that I was just thinking in my head, as you mentioned that, yes, you've had to close your in-person doors, but now you've opened your virtual doors, and the reach is so much further because now it's more than just Austin, Texas. You're providing a service to anyone that wants it from anywhere into, is it the state? Is it the country? Is it the world? I think that's where, let's dive into this more and give us the roadmap, right? I think we chatted a little bit earlier before we started the recording, and I think a great topic to center this discussion around is, what is the roadmap to successfully do telehealth? If that's the word, right? We can even get into the semantics of that, because you see it on the Facebook groups as telehealth versus e-visit versus whatever we want to call it. But how do we find success now, as well as how do we create a system to be successful moving forward into the future?
Yeah, I think the last statement that you made there is important for us to, even as hard as it is in the midst of the situation, to think into the far future. I would start by compelling people to understand that this is an opportunity to build resiliency into our businesses, to try and figure out where we can automate things, where we can find new revenue streams that will really, hopefully, far outlast the coronavirus pandemic, right? And that as we're implementing telehealth or any form of service line, whether even if it's just say in y'all's cases, selling prehab, programs directly to consumers, whatever the case may be, to always think of this as, is this going to play? Is this marketing strategy? Is this product? Is this thing I'm recording on video going to be relevant in an evergreen kind of way and useful and supportive of my business and of my clients in a long-term fashion, as opposed to just the next, say, few months when things are really, really crazy. So I want people to kind of, as you're implementing these different strategies and new services, try your best to think long-term and say, well, if I set it up this way now, it might help in the moment, but then I'm going to have to redo something, or that's not going to be applicable in the future, or I'm going to have to re-record that, or whatever. So think about these things in the long term, in a long-term fashion, both short game, how do we keep things afloat, but how do we also, think about the long game here and come out of this with a much stronger, more resilient business than we went into it. So that'd be the kind of the first point I just wanted to make. As far as just like getting started in telehealth, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my good friend, Rob Vining, who for years has been kind of leading the charge. There are certainly others that have been talking about telehealth, but he and his team have built out such an amazing, set of resources at telehealthpt.com. And so anyone listening to this who's really interested in that, I would definitely check that out. He, out of the incredible generosity, even made some of his, bigger packages completely free right now when we all need it most. And and certainly a good bit of what I'll repeat now, as far as like getting started, the logistical side of it, I got from him. The marketing side of it, as I was telling you guys before the call, how you market and sell different services is not, the strategies and the overarching concepts don't change just because now you're marketing something that's online as a service rather than face to face. The things you say might change, the text might change, but the strategies behind it and how you actually push psychological buttons to help people make the decision to work with you, that's no different than, all the stuff I've been coaching, for years and years. So, to go back to your question of like, how do you get started? Well, it's actually, luckily through technology these days, it's not that hard. And I'll say now that one of the things I did in this past week with learning from Rob, and then working with my staff to troubleshoot, there's only so much you can learn from somebody, and then you got to do it yourself or have your staff do it. And then you run into these different hurdles. And so what we did was, as we learned how this all works, the little kinks that were like, oh, when we did a dry run of that, oh yes, we were on a Zoom call. That's why it wouldn't connect, or that's why that person. So we worked all those kinks out, and I had them build out, for the most part, it was my staff build out just a Quickstart guide. And I purposely did not go into great detail about a lot of the different things. It was more of just, I want to get this out fast so that people can get it when they need it. And it's not a 40-page ebook. It's like a 4-page, 5-page thing where it's like, boom, 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 boom. Here you go. This will get you started. It may not be pretty, but you're going to be seeing patients if you have patients to see. And there's a little bit about marketing and kind of transitioning to telehealth. So I would point people to that Quickstart guide. They can download it. I'll make sure it's always free at drjarodcarter.com/telehealth. And then some recent episodes on my podcast, they could go to episode 113 and 114, which will come out in a couple of days. But by the time this comes out, it'll be out. drjarodcarter.com/113 or /114. And so, those would be like ways where you can quickly figure out exactly the steps you need to take. And if you want, you guys, I'm happy to kind of outline those for you right now as well.
Yeah, I think that'll be good to an extent, because there's definitely pushback from people. And I think that's also that plays into what we spoke about earlier. You took a really good ethical decision to make a change last week with how you're doing business. And Mike and I can relate, right? We were just in the clinic last week. It was business per usual just 1 week ago. And now the landscape has completely changed. And because of that, I think people are always hesitant to go about change because it's purely change. Now trying to figure out a new system. Mm-hmm. But if it's easy and there is a simple quick start to it, let's share some of those simple things that you can do summarized to sort of help motivate people to, hey, okay, let me do this. And then we can all be doing our part with helping to flatten the curve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there are a lot of different platforms that I think work quite well. The ones that I've kind of honed in on are the one that we use, and we use it because we use this EMR IntakeQ, so intakeq.com, and they have a HIPAA compliant version where we're able to, basically for $10 per user per month, have this great, tech savvy, HIPAA compliant platform where we can do our visits, and it connects with the EMR, it connects with our billing, our super bills, all that kind of stuff. So that was an easy choice for us. For anyone who's using IntakeQ, we've loved that. If you're not using IntakeQ, then I've tended to just kind of direct people toward doxy.me. And I'm not saying that other platforms aren't great. It's just, it sounds like that's a low barrier to entry, quick to set up option. They even have a free option, although apparently it's not like HD and it doesn't have certain characteristics like automated email reminders with links and stuff like that. So it's a little more manual if you go with the free version, but it's only $35 per month per user, if I remember correctly. And it even has the ability where you can like put up a little payment wall where at the beginning or the end or any point in the session, a patient can literally put in their credit card information and pay you. So it has that capability where, you enter them in the doxy.me as an appointment. And if you're on a paid version, it'll send them the reminder emails with the links and instructions on how to come in and, do the session, and you can take payment as well. So I feel like that's a very quick, easy, low barrier to entry kind of platform. There are certainly others, and I'm not, saying that there's anything wrong with any others, but it's like, if you want to get started quick and easy, then those are great options and what we kind of looked at. Zoom also has an option, but if you want from what I know, if you want the form of Zoom that is truly HIPAA compliant and you have a signed business associate agreement, BAA, then it's $200 a month. Now, let's say you have a practice where you've got 7-8 PTs that you're expecting to be users and utilize the platform. I believe that $200 a month gives you an up to 10 user kind of scenario. So with doxy.me, if that's 35 per month, after you get past a few users, you start to kind of even out and you can look a little more evenly financially between Zoom and Doxy. So those are three, good, easy platforms. A buddy of mine, I haven't looked at it myself, but I believe he created a couple of years ago one called, I think it's Anywhere PT or something like that. But Mark Milligan created a platform that I'm going to be looking into soon. So again, there are lots of easy and quick to set up platforms out there, and that's what I'd look at, just to start. The other components of that is make sure that your liability insurance covers, those types of visits.
Smart.
I'm with HPSO, and they sent out a notice saying that it's not the format or the way you provide the services. It's just making sure that you're in line with your State Practice Act and your documentation, all that kind of stuff. They basically said, at least from what I read, that I got as an email, that we're good to go with providing services as usual, but via an online platform. And then, you're going to want to make sure that you have worked through all the technical kinks with some good, practice runs with your staff or with family or whoever you need to get on the other end as if they're a patient. And as you're doing those things, I highly suggest it's like every little kink, make note of it or have someone make note of it so that you can kind of work through. That's what we did with our Quickstart guide, work through, what are the things that we need to warn people about, because not every browser is the same. Not every, phone or computer or whatever, or iPad, so different, if you can get staff to like say, all right, we're going to do it on an iPad, we're going to do it on a Mac, we're going to do it on a PC, we're going to do it on a phone, right? And maybe an iPhone and what do you call it? A Samsung or, just like a non-iPhone, and see like where are the technical glitches that people might run into. And then what we did was we would link them in the emails I get. It's like, in order to make sure that this telehealth, this telephysio or online physical therapy session goes smoothly, here are some things to keep in mind. If this is your device, blah, blah, or in our case, we just linked to like a troubleshooting document that IntakeQ had kind of created. Another thing, kind of pro tip thing that Rob had shared with me that we passed on to all of our clients is make sure that no one on your Wi-Fi is using it for Netflix, for, any kind of, YouTube, Amazon Prime streaming, any of these video streaming services. They will take priority over your platform, and it'll make it for a crappy, spotty call that's dropping in and out, low quality. So we preface that on the phone with them, in the email as well. And then when they get on with us, we say, hey, just so you probably saw in the email, but do you have anyone using your Wi-Fi right now that might be streaming video or something like that. Similarly, you wouldn't want to try to do this with like Zoom or something else running in the background, or kind of a video recording software. If you're running anything like that in the background, for those of us who have, like me, 1,000 tabs open and different things happening, those are all things that happen. Those are things that can throw a big glitch. And the problem is that a lot of times when especially if it's an established patient who's used to seeing you face to face, and you're like kind of convinced them begrudgingly to do this telehealth thing with you, let me prove it to you. Because I've had to say that, like, let me do this session with you and prove that at the end of the session, you can be, walking out of your room at home instead of the clinic feeling and moving really, really well. Instead of me throwing manual techniques at it, now it's like, grab that compression band, grab the foam roll, do exactly this, now retest the movement. You can do all that, right? And it's really worked out well. I've been really pleased with the telehealth kind of option and visits. But you get someone to say yes begrudgingly, and they're like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And then you spend 15 minutes troubleshooting because you didn't know these things or tell them these things, then you've lost that patient most likely. Or, it's highly likely that, this is going to be a rougher start than it has to be in the telehealth world for you. So do that legwork up front. It does not take long. You just need to get with your staff, or if you don't have staff, get with your family and say, all right, we're doing this. We're working out the kinks. We're figuring out what I'm telling patients. And then, you've got that information for them, and you're going to have a much better, smoother start to your telehealth sessions. But, once you have those logistical pieces in place, the reminder emails, you've worked through the technical kinks, you make sure that your own home set up, like even literally like just looking at lighting. It's like, where am I going to be doing these? And when you get on those calls, it's like, oh wow, I don't have light in front of me, but there's a bright window behind me. I look like a silhouette, yeah. Right? And that's not going to work, right? So all those little details to make sure that you over deliver when it comes time to you getting on that telehealth visit with a patient or a new patient, that's huge. And then, on top of that, when we talk about the over delivery, it's like, we definitely send pre-recorded the stuff that we have on YouTube for certain exercises. Like in y'all's cases, y'all have these amazing libraries of exercises. But one thing I might suggest that you guys do, and that anyone else doing this, is that you record a personalized video that you're not, maybe if you post it on YouTube, it's just like private or something like that, but you record something just for that person. And this is something I kind of came up with in the last week. I was like, it's good to share the things you've already done and have those kind of exercises outlined. But if nothing else, just sending them a video saying, hey, it was great working with you. Just as a recap, you're going to be doing this, and that. The other videos I have linked here are going to cover that and show you exactly what to do. I know we went over it, but it's good, to know the little details, to be able to have something to come back to. But I deeply appreciate you trusting me with your care through these, online physical therapy services. And I look forward to our next visit next week. But something personalized that says their name and they know it's just for them, I think adds that bit of a touch that people need right now, because they're trying something different. They're trying something new. And, I think, we need to constantly be thinking of how can we over deliver. And this goes back to a lot of the strategies that I teach my students is, even like a handwritten card after a first visit, that goes a long way. Those kinds of things will be the differentiating factor between you and many others doing this and offering these types of services and keeping people on schedule and willing to do this stuff with you online.
Totally. It's just good business practices, right?
Exactly.
Whether you're doing it face-to-face or whether you're doing it online, that stuff, it just goes such.
All right, we're back. So speaking of technical difficulties, we just got cut off from Zoom because our upgrade didn't go through in time. So that was funny. So yeah, work out all those kinks before. I think Jarod just shared a ton of great advice on kind of how to take those actionable steps to get going. And he mentioned a lot of good links. We're going to link to all those in the show notes so that way you guys can download these resources that are for free to get yourself started. But I think the bigger question on a lot of people's, that's a big question on everyone's mind. How do I get started? But then the other side of it, the psychological side, how do I feel comfortable? I think there are so many therapists out there struggling with the notion of, I'm not doing manual anymore. That's my value. My value is my hands, or, I'm not cueing my patients and putting my hands on them for their exercises. I'm sure those conversations might come up with some of your staff and maybe even some of the people that you consult with and help. So how did you tackle some of those problems, and what things did you tell them? Because I'm sure that's a common sentiment among many therapists.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And my practice was no different because, I'll just to preface, and we have from the beginning in 2010, my practice is all about being manual therapy practice, right? That's what we're known for. That's where our reputation is. That's why people come to see us, or at least that's, what I thought for years and years. But one of the things I just say is that, whether you do it with your hands or you do it in another form, people are actually coming to you, offline or online, for results, right? They're coming to you because they need to get back to doing something at a certain level that they can no longer do because of their pain or injury. And whether it's, using your hands, giving them a good home program online, or, shaking a bloody chicken over the head, honestly, they don't care. Like, if they get back to rolling around on the ground with their grandkids without pain, and they can do that every weekend now, again, like, they do not care. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of it is, I feel that hesitancy of, well, wait a minute, like you just said, like, my value's in my hands, because I had that same idea. My two staff therapists, certainly are badass manual therapists, and that's the way they provided care, and still, would like to provide care, I'm sure. But we've all three of us, like, man, after we did it, you were like, well, this is kind of cool. It was almost like being a student again, and kind of like starting anew and having to get creative again with, choosing how you're going to help somebody. Back when it wasn't like, just second nature to just be like immediately knowing what you were going to do based on someone's movement or limitations or pain or whatever, you're going to put them on, you're going to take them through this and that series and then retest. It's like, well, now we got to say, all right, well, how can I guide this person to reproduce to whatever degree I can manage what I would do with my hands, right? And it's actually, for those who haven't tried it yet and haven't had this experience, I can tell you it's been pleasantly surprising. So I hope that can kind of take some of the edge off and anxiety around those who, like me, had been, career manual therapists and think, how in the world am I going to deliver my services in this way? Yeah. And when it comes down to how you do that, I said that kind of on a more of a mindset level, but that's another area where I think Rob Vining and Telehealth PT is a great resource, because they have hundreds of hours of actual recorded treatments for every part of the body and all the different syndromes that we might normally treat in the clinic. They've recorded effective treatment sessions via telehealth. So you can go in there and get these ideas of what to do. Now, I personally have been so slammed, I haven't been able to look through a lot of those, but I looked and it's like over 300 in there. I think it's called the PT Telehealth Library or something like that. Definitely has the word library in it. And so I've got my staff watching those things as well to get ideas on how to treat. It's like, okay, I've got an ankle patient tomorrow, a knee patient, and a back patient. Okay, I'm going to watch, a video recorded telehealth session for each of those things and get some ideas on top of what I already know that I want to look at and do. For me, it's like the home programs that I give to people have historically been very much focused on trying to reproduce what I do with my hands. Being cash pay, I'm not saying that we try, that we have to get every patient done in 4 or 5 visits or we're not going to make it. I got plenty of patients that are on maintenance, plans and have been seeing me for years. But in general, you want to try to get people better as quickly as you can, and that's going to spread the word about your services, and that it's like, yeah, you might be paying $200 a session, but you're going to be done in 3 or 4 visits. It's kind of that approach, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've always had the approach, and try to teach my staff to have the approach of, instead of just, your classic stretches and exercises and movement-based things, give them the Theracane stuff, give them the lacrosse ball, the foam roll, the compression bandage, the, taping, the things that they can do to kind of help to work the tissues and mobilize the joints and soft tissues as similarly as possible as what we're doing in the clinic to support what we do in the clinic, aside from just the strengthening or just the mobility components of things. So for me, it's like, we've been doing that kind of for years. We just mostly been teaching it as a home program thing. Now we're actually guiding them through it in these sessions and then building on that with their home program. So, again, excuse me, again, if you're listening to this and freaking out because you've been nothing but a hardcore manual therapist your whole career, try not to freak out too much. It is working for a lot of us with that same background. It's working really well, actually. And I think it's just a matter of getting creative and trying it, and, delving into these resources that are out there to kind of teach you that there is a different way, at least temporarily. I'm planning on keeping telehealth services for the rest of the life of my business. I just think that the opportunity is so big. And now that we've done it and seen that it works, I'm actually quite excited about it. Because like you said in the beginning, it's like now we're way beyond Austin. We're all of Texas, and we even have a therapist license in California right now. So in my mind, I'm like, well, if I can really crack the code on how to market directly to the public for telehealth services, I can hire therapists in other states, and really build a huge business. So, but back to it, don't freak out too much if you're a manual therapist. It does work, and it is, it's kind of fun actually to get creative with it again.
And I think it's I'd love for you to share some of the feedback that you've already gotten from patients, because there still is that worry about that transition to, okay, well, I can't use my hands. Mm-hmm. But if we start sharing some of these success stories and hearing what is the patient's experience with this so far, and how has the feedback been for you and your therapist, that'd be awesome to share, because Mike and I completely agree. I mean, I think that's just sort of how the two of us treat already. Like I truly look at what we do as movement consulting, and it's so much more than what we do with our hands. It's guiding people, it's providing reassurance, and helping people move. And there's so many different ways to get people moving. And I just think if we can get people, especially the patients, to buy into it remotely, right, then I just think, all right, PTs are going to understand, like, hey, this is just only opening another door for me to help people move better.
Right. One thing I'd say is that not one of the people, whether a brand new patient, because we had a few of those, or a patient that we transitioned to telehealth from being well established as a hands-on in-clinic patient, not one of the patients that we've been able to convince to give it a try has not, booked beyond that point, because that, and that just kind of goes to show that the results we've been able to get with them very quickly, even though we were not, hardcore long-term telehealth practitioners, have already been good enough to where people have seen the value in it, and said, yes, I actually, I felt better at the end of this. You're working with them, and you can still, you're seeing them through the computer. You can still see the light bulbs go off and the facial expressions of like, oh, wow, that's much better. Or, oh, wow, I never thought of it that way, that, this issue in my hip could be part of what's going on down in my foot, whatever the case may be. So all the educational stuff and the way you guide them through a session, you still have those aha moments. You still have those movement breakthroughs and those pain reductions, just like in the clinic. And, so far it's, I think, been really eye-opening for those who have been willing to give it a try. Now, I'll say this, we definitely have had plenty of patients. Like I said in the beginning, I don't know if we were recording or not, but we've been able to retain a little over 50% of our current, plans of care and transition them to telehealth. So yeah, that's a big hit, but I think, it's also could be worse. And we've been able to fill in some of those gaps with marketing directly to the public and getting new patients in the door as telehealth patients. But, we've got, those patients that they've been coming for a long time. They're more of maintenance. We're not changing much in their home program. And they're like, I'm really into the hands-on thing, and I'd rather wait and see how this, if this blows over and we can get back together in person soon. I say, no worries, we're going to follow up with you, because, that's another big thing, is that you've got to have a tracking system in place where, if this goes just a few weeks or a few months or beyond, that you're continuing to just stay in front of that person and continuing to try and get them to try a telehealth session. We've even given, like, those who were, really hesitant, I was like, what do you think about this? What if we just do a complimentary session? Let me prove to you what we can do. And if you don't see that the value's there, that it's worth, what you're spending, then I totally understand. No worries. But let's keep this appointment, tomorrow, and let's give it a shot. And I've had to offer that a handful of times. And one time they said, no, I'm good. But the rest, they took it. And then everyone that took it has continued on after that point. So sometimes, even if it's a little bit of giving your time away for free to overcome, a pretty understandable objection of an established manual therapy patient, do it. If you do a good job, you might retain that patient, and you'll more than make up for the free time you gave away. And if you don't want to consider giving away your services for free, because some people feel like that's like a devaluation and get all pissed off about free consultations, just think of it as building, it's not free. You're just building that time and payment of that time into your future treatments. You can think of it that way.
You're getting reps in too. I think these discovery sessions online are going to be a big hit in terms of trying to market telehealth services and trying to get people who they may not necessarily really want that experience. Like people really want the hands-on stuff, or there's going to be people that are hesitant to buy into it, but getting those reps in can only help you. And it's only going to just help with trying to get the person to buy into it. So I think that's really smart.
One other kind of pricing thing that we're utilizing, and by all means, I mean, this is very different. These are different times, obviously, than normal. And I don't typically suggest deep discounts. And, my mastermind students their jaws dropped a little bit when I talked about this strategy, but as a way to show good faith in your community and to help do like what we were trying to do with preemptively closing our doors and switching to telehealth, which is flatten the curve and get this thing over with as soon as possible and do what's best for the community and the world as a whole. So as in that vein, and with that being our driving factor, we've actually really deeply discounted our services. Basically, we're $185, close to $200 an hour for our in-clinic treatments, since they're, the manual therapy is not in the session anymore. And it's a very different approach to treatment. I did drop the price, our standard price, down to like $145. Mm-hmm. But while the CDC is saying, please do not, go out, please stay at home, please practice social distancing, then we're offering like an even deeper discount. So we're, for the time being, at $99 for a 60-minute session. Most of our follow-up sessions are now 30 minutes at $60. So way off of what we'd normally be doing. But just to kind of talk a little bit more about that, since we're looking at strategies for people to try and keep their schedule full and keep their business afloat. To me, if I don't have to let my therapist go and I can keep them busy and break even, that's a big win for me. If I can keep my patient consensus up so that when we do come out of this and we can start to, see patients in person again, the ramp up to a completely full schedule again is going to be so much faster and easier if we're able to maintain as many clients as possible. So by getting people in the door, by dropping that financial barrier to entry, especially in these economically difficult and uncertain times, it's something that I'm willing to do now that I wouldn't normally be willing to do. So just to kind of talk people through the thought process there and what they might consider doing with pricing and, showing of good faith and trying to help people to stay at home, but still get the care they need in a financially accessible way.
So that was super helpful. I think it's all about getting your feet wet. And I just feel like when there's things that are new, people just don't feel comfortable with them because it is new. And I'm just saying something that just, of course, yeah, duh, it's new. But it's like, it's that unknown. And like you're saying, it's not just for now, it's for later. This is setting you up for success, opening up different avenues of service that you can provide for people well beyond this point. As long as it's here in your practice act, people are in your state. And you could be doing telehealth on weekends. You could be doing telehealth in the morning before you go in later. Think about all your post-op patients that the surgeon says, oh, no, sorry, no PT until 4 weeks. Well, guess what? We could be doing telehealth with these people because the education is so important too. It's not just the manual skills. Educating them, okay, this is how much weight you should be putting on now. Like I got Achilles repair who I'm doing telehealth with. Okay, we got to remove your heel lift by this point because by this point we should be without no heel lifts. By this point we're going to be in a boot without no heel lifts. By this point we're going to be out of a boot. And that's the education that's super valuable. That can 100% be replicated. Telehealth in person, through email, any form of communication. It's that communication with the patient that I think is so huge, and and getting their questions answered, conquering their fears if they have any, making them feel that they are doing the right thing and that they're being cared for. That can be accomplished a lot of ways, and telehealth is just another avenue to do that. That I think hopefully, like you're saying, clinics like yourself are going to latch on to for this time, to hopefully keep the doors open, but for the future to provide a different service, another service for their patients, to get the best care possible.
Yeah. I'm excited about what's going to be possible, and just adding the service line to the business now that we've kind of gotten our feet wet and recognize that it is a great way to provide service, and our patients are getting good results and are enjoying the sessions. And like, this is awesome. I'm excited about, really growing this side of the business. I also wonder, like, will this actually become once we're all past this and we're doing in-clinic stuff again, will I end up with, a greater amount of my revenues coming from telehealth? I don't know. We'll see. Yeah.
I was going to say, because, this is moving forward, this may really end up supplementing a lot of people's care. Think of all the patients that come in and, okay, they have kids, or it's just hard for them to come in, and maybe early on, you're starting more hands-on, you're doing more manual, you're doing more queuing, but then the person is doing very well with a home program. And then now, I think sometimes there's those moments where, this person would benefit from a home program, but they also benefit from coming into PT sessions and doing it here because they're dedicating time to it. Now, this may be a really good option for people that they're doing great with a home program, but they just want that continued guidance, and they want that continued feedback. So I guess one question that I'm curious about, you guys are still even 100% cash-based with the telehealth services, correct?
Yes.
So would it get tricky, or would it be interesting for people that are doing insurance where they're like, okay, we're billing this one session in person, but then if we want to do some telehealth stuff, we're trying to bill online? I can imagine, because right now it seems like a lot of the insurance companies are being flexible, and who knows what the rules will be down the road, but I'm not sure how that would work if people are trying to bill insurance wise.
Yeah. And to be honest, my expertise and, the things that I'm really confident in speaking about are more about like when insurance doesn't cover it, or the rules around, when Medicare doesn't cover it, and when it does cover it. And so when it comes to what insurances are doing, and when people are, had started, insurance based with or in network with a patient, and then it's like, okay, but they don't have telehealth coverage. What do we do now? I couldn't, one, I wouldn't want to give in, wrong information. Two, that information or those rules are probably different with every private insurer in every state. Yeah. And three, they're changing rapidly. Like every day I see an announcement of, okay, now this insurance is allowing telehealth with these stipulations. And it's like, when it all washes out, once again, I find myself so grateful that we're just cash pay, and we're not dealing with all this bullshit in Medicare, excuse my language, Medicare and private insurance regulations and rules on what we get paid for our services. We set those rates, and we prove that value, and our patients pay us at the time of service, and it's just a beautiful thing. But yes, I couldn't speak, too much in detail on those logistical things with insurances and in and out of network. Yeah.
It clearly seems like it's much easier, in the way to go about this right now is just do cash.
It is. Yeah. I mean, obviously though, just like if this weren't going on, and I've coached a lot of clients through dropping insurance contracts and transitioning out of network into a cash pay, scenario. And when you have an ongoing, long-term clientele that's used to utilizing insurance for your services, it's a bigger leap mentally for those people to say, okay, yeah, I was using insurance before, but now I'm totally fine with paying cash. It's a lot bigger leap than us in our cash pay clinic saying, we were able to use our hands on you, but now we're going to guide you on how to kind of replicate that on your own. But the payment stuff hasn't really changed. In fact, while we're trying to help you with social distancing, we're actually going to give a discount. So it's a tougher scenario for those who have, are really ingrained in the in-network world, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. I've said this many times, it's actually become a lot easier in the last 5 years, especially 3 years, to transition to cash pay or to start cash pay in the beginning, because the consumer overall is having to deal with higher and higher deductibles, higher and higher copays, or just, zero coverage for physical therapy and those ancillary services anyhow. So it's becoming more common that even if someone has, quote unquote, has good insurance, their coverage or their out-of-pocket costs for 2 or 3 times a week at an in-network clinic is going to be the same or more than coming to see me or my staff therapist, once a week. So it's become easier, and that's something that we have to kind of talk prospective clients through, and those listening wondering how are we going to get people to go from, using their insurance to not using it. You might actually find in some situations, depending on if they've hit their deductible or not, or what their copay was, it's like, well, yeah, we were seeing them 2 times a week before, but if we're just mostly focusing on a home program and guiding them, could we do that 1 time a week? Okay, well, they got a $75 copay anyways, so now it's a wash, you can slice it and dice it in a lot of ways to make it financially doable for people, even in the cases where they're used to using their insurance. You might be able to kind of help adjust frequency or adjust whatever you need to, or give a discount, or figure out some way to make the difference financially not so great when they're already having to make the decision on whether or not to continue via telehealth when you're not going to be able to lay your hands on them.
Yeah. So this has been packed with a ton of really good info. I think it's so much more than just this telehealth, right? You brought up so many good things about just how to do good business and how to show the value of yourself. And we talked about there's so much more value to PTs than just their hands. So I'd love for us to wrap it up in terms of, I'd like to hear what is your opinion and sort of the outlook on where telehealth is going to go over like the next week, the next month. Right now it's March 24th and things could change rapidly. I mean, a lot more doors may have to close because we really need to flatten this curve, and the business of PT may change as we know it. So I'd love to get your opinion, and more importantly, just like, what are some of those simple, few actionable steps that people can take right now to get started? And other than what we mentioned earlier, so to recap that, it was either using Intake Q, correct me if I'm wrong, Doxy. We also have Zoom. There's a free ebook on your website. You also mentioned one super valuable resource. I don't want to mess up the guy's name, but then, just like how, if someone listens to this, where do they go next? And what is your prediction on telehealth?
Okay. So I think prediction wise is, there's no doubt that this is driving, tons of practices that never would have looked at it into having to do it. So we're clearly going to see an explosion of the offering of these services, which also means an explosion of the competition against the services we're now offering online. So that is going to very quickly become, now we were fighting for face-to-face patients, and now we're fighting for online patients. No doubt there's going to be a lot of practices, established and new, entering that realm. How many stay beyond this pandemic and the need, the point where we don't need to avoid face-to-face interactions is, I think, a lot of people will do it for a while and then it's going to drop off. But hopefully a lot of people continue to utilize it, and they have the systems in place and the marketing systems, and they're able to reach a much broader market that way. So I think those things are almost definites. I think where we might find that the courses of the future could change is going to have to do with a lot of the decisions that political leaders, decide. I mean, at the time of this recording, and I think this might come out in a few weeks, so when this comes out, it might have already been obvious what happened, but, President Trump, and even like I saw the Lieutenant Governor of Texas, both saying things like, we're not going to just keep doors on businesses closed and let the economy, collapse. Like we're going to lighten those things and say we're open for business, even if it means that this thing gets a whole lot worse. I think some people kind of view this as, well, if it gets a lot worse, maybe some old people and some, people with disabilities die, but, the rest of us will probably be okay. And I know that sounds pretty harsh, and I don't know if I'm taking statements out of context, but, just watching the way they said it and what they said, that's kind of the take I got from it. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens politically in the decisions they make to try and save the economy, especially given this is an election year. Yeah. Right. So that's going to be driving a lot of things, because no one wants to go into a re-election with a crappy, economy. And so we'll see. I hope they don't make those decisions based on, staying in power and economics. At the same time, you gotta, I think, as a intelligent person, you got to try to look at it from all different sides and look at the economy and the effects that has, that this has with businesses. And there's no easy solution, that's for sure. I would not want to be in their position. But I think that is going to, as far as longer term predictions, a lot's going to happen in the next month that will kind of, play that out in a certain direction or not. And then kind of just recapping, I think if you're looking to get started, I think that the quickest thing to do to have that list of resources that I mentioned earlier and kind of the step-by-step is that free telehealth Quickstart guide, drjarodcarter.com/telehealth. And whether it's with me or with the guy you were talking about earlier is Rob Vining. He's fantastic. Definitely check out telehealthpt.com.
Yes, Rob. I was totally going to guess a different last name.
I
just shut my mouth.
Very good. Whether it's, one of us or someone else that you trust that is having success in this world of telehealth, but especially, I think, not just someone who's like coming up and saying like all of a sudden they're a telehealth expert. Like, I'm still a newbie. We've had some early success and we're quickly getting information out that we're curating from a lot of places. Right. But someone who has established that they have not only, created the type of business themselves that you want, but also have guided a lot of other people to do the same thing and colleagues to do the same thing. Finding mentorship is always an important thing. I mean, you guys early on, reach out to me and others and are a great example of that. It's like, take the path that others have kind of tread before you and get that guidance. Whether, yes, there's tons of free content, podcast, everyone's got a podcast these days. There's so much information out there, but sometimes having somebody to say, yeah, but in your situation, you don't need those 10 different things. You need to focus on this one thing right now. Yeah. And then after that, you focus on this thing. So getting guidance from someone who can help you and has proven, that they can help you, I think is really important, whether it's good times or bad. I think that's just a good principle to go with. But yeah, those are the ways I'd compel people to get started, and the information and resources that I'd send you to.
Awesome, man. Thanks, Jarod. Anything else, Mike?
No, I really appreciate it. This is going to be helpful for people to hopefully kickstart them in the butt if what's happened over the last 2 weeks hasn't already kickstarted them. But then, like I said, having some actionable steps from concrete things to do, but then more on the mental side, the psyche side, which I think is, I feel like what's holding a lot of people, in my personal opinion, what's holding a lot of people back from making those jumps.
Yeah. On that note, as far as holding back from making a jump, it's like, when we were talking about this with staff, and I have one staff member who has done a lot of telehealth actually in the past. And she was like, yeah, but it was always like short visits that were more of a supplement, like Craig was talking about earlier. It's like, it can be used beautifully as a supplement to in-person clinic treatment. And she was like, so I don't know, I'm just not really able to wrap my head around this idea of like, it's all we have to offer. It's all we, are providing, and, what we're charging for it, even with the discounted rate. I was like, well, look, here's the deal. We don't have a choice.
Yeah.
I didn't say this directly, but I alluded to the fact it was like, if you guys want to continue to work and get paid, like this is the only way we have to offer our services right now. as far as I know, unless you're in a situation where you can still see people in person. But, I just said, look, we're just going to have to wrap our heads around it. And kind of like we're asking our patients, I'm asking you to give it a try, to watch these other examples of how this can work, and to figure it out and get creative again, because we got two choices: either don't make it work or make it work. And I'm making it work. So if you guys want to continue seeing patients and making money, it's like we gotta just give it a try. And I think whether it's practice owners out there listening or employees, I think that you just got to give it a try. Give it a chance. In our experience so far, and that same employee is like, man, this is great.
That's awesome.
It really has worked out well so far. And I think that there's a ton of opportunity, and I really want to see as many of our colleagues and the practices in the world of PT to come out of this, to not just weather the storm, but come out stronger. It breaks my heart when I hear of practices going down for any reason, because I'm so passionate about what we provide as therapists. And I'm glad that we can kind of have these platforms with which to, get these messages out, and whether it's logistical stuff or just the mindset stuff of just give it a damn try. You can make it work. You can make it work.
We have to adapt. This isn't the last time that we're going to get tested, and we know how valuable we are as a profession. So we just have to constantly adapt. And I think you put that beautifully. So that was awesome, Jarod. Thank you so much for your time. I know people are definitely going to love this. And it was awesome, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this podcast with Michael, Jarod, and I. I hope you found it really valuable. The landscape of telehealth is honestly changing by the day. I would keep tabs on Jarod, his website, and all of the resources that he recommended, because these people are working extremely hard to help educate PTs to stay on top of this. So check out the show notes. You're going to find a few valuable things that Jarod mentioned during the podcast. If you like this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. It would really mean a lot to us. Please post a photo. Please take a video of you listening to our podcast. Tag us, tag the Prehab Audio Experience, and we'll be sure to share it. All right, everyone, stay healthy and safe out there. And until next time, take care.